Hi, I'm Sadie,
I'm Ashley.
and we have kind of a weird one today. So we're both on Zoom. So if our audio is a little weird or not kind of how it normally is, just power through with us. Our schedules are nuts, but we wanted to get this one out for you guys. So we're doing the best we can.
No, I feel really extra smart that we're like figuring this stuff out because like remember you guys, we're like not tech people
No,
and
no.
here's ladies crushing it here in the tech space.
It's
Um
it's me and Google against the world at this point in time. So
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, we should say where Nelson is because that's pretty exciting.
oh, yes, yes. So Nelson was going to join us for this one when we originally had it scheduled. And then they decided to be little secret squirrels and they said they were going to just watch the Pittsburgh show. And it turns out Chris was competing. So that's her husband. So he competed at, was it Teen and Masters Collegiate?
It was in collegiate, yeah, in Pittsburgh.
Which is like that's some pretty stiff competition that you go like in Pittsburgh and stuff. They bodybuilding's real big over there.
Yes, yeah, I know. I called it though. I told you. I I think the last podcast even I was like, is he competing soon?
He
She's
looks
like,
pretty
I don't
lean.
know what he's doing. Yeah, we knew it. We knew.
Yeah.
So
But he did really well. I believe it was he placed third in what did I say? A classic and then fourth in men's physique. So at a national level, for doing like a secret squirrel prep, that's pretty
yeah, that's impressive. Well, and here's a message I think it sends to people is that you can be in a prep and not have to like throw it in your family's face or throw it in, it can't
yes.
do it without it interfering your work or
Yeah.
your routine. So I think that's a great example that, and, some people like to do it that way. They like to kind of be a little undercover. Um, I remember Sid Gillen,
Yes.
the figure queen, that when, she didn't post a lot on social media leading up to the Olympia. She was kind of, that work in silence. And, sometimes if you're not having to document everything on social media, you just kind of take some of that stress off and the
Yes.
pressure. Um, yeah. Did you find that when you were like before your competitions, like when you were prepping and that, did you find that you liked to document? Did that help keep you accountable? Or were you the opposite that you like to just kind of keep it undercover?
Um, I'm definitely more of like the documenter. But I think that's just because I'm more of like social media, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I did a lot more of like the vlogging and stuff, and a lot of that was just kind of for me to go back on. One of my other teammates does the same thing too, and she's like, I don't care if anyone watches them. She's like, it's more just for me, for like to document as I'm going through, for like future wise, I can go back or whatever, you know. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of like you get so many people that have questions and want to know what it's like and what you're going through, and just kind of be like open and honest and raw. Because I think, like we talked about before, like today's age is just very highlight reel and fluff
Right.
and stuff. So I think it's kind of nice, like people get to see a little bit of like the behind the scenes, like some of my like friends and family and stuff like that, like to watch, and kind of see how that's going. And it's always fun, like you can see like my face go from like normal to like Skeletor.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. When I was competing, I did find it was helpful for me because it helped, first of all, keep me accountable.
Mhm.
Uh, but then also the feedback that I got from people that I had no idea that were following along.
Yeah.
And it, like toot my own horn or anything. I just thought it was like extra encouragement of like, oh wow, these people are watching because they're maybe it's encouraging to them to get into the competing space, or maybe they're just entertained because it was something that they're not familiar with.
Yeah.
Um, but that encouragement and support that I got from people is what kind of kept feeling that want or that desire to document. Now I have a couple friends that they're like complete opposite. They feel like if they're on, like they start minimizing social media use when they're in prep because they start playing the game of, clickbait and the rabbit hole of trying to find out who you're competing against or trying to guess. And
Yeah.
you that compare game, and it can really prep goggles are a true thing, and you start picking yourself apart and feeling inadequate. And so I think everybody just has their different
Yeah.
preference. Um, on that, it just made me think of this. The IFBB Pro League. So, for those of you who aren't familiar, you have to, so like you have your pro card and you have to pay for it every year. And I don't remember the amount. It's not like an insane amount. But the nice thing is that you can sign up for shows for free. So when you're on the NPC level, like every time you do a show, you have to pay for every class you're in. That can really add up and cost a lot of money. So one of the perks of being a pro is that you don't have to pay for that anymore. However, once you sign up for a show, you sign that contract. In order to get out of that contract, you have to show just like significant evidence, or I don't know how like strict they get. I've heard that it's pretty strict, but if you can't commit to a show after you already signed the contract, like it really has to be an injury, an illness, a family emergency. Or if that keeps happening, they can strip your pro card. So with that being said, what was happening, and this was back when I was competing, even because I would get really frustrated,
Mm.
is that I would sign my contract for a show, and usually about a week out from the show, the list would come out. And so you would see this list, and you could see who was on the list and be like, oh, okay. And sometimes, like, I tried not to focus too much on the list because I didn't want to freak myself out.
Yeah.
But and what would happen is like maybe at a smaller show, let's say there's only like 15 people. I remember this specifically happened at the Omaha show. There was like 9 of us signed up, and which is way small for a pro show. We get to Omaha, and for like athlete check-in night, I can't tell you how many. It was way more than 9, easily doubled. And so that was frustrating because what was happening is people would sign up, they would sign their contracts, and then when the list would come out that week before, they would be like, oh, that's a small show, or oh, I think because of all who showed up, now I'm going to go to that show.
Hmm.
Well, the IFBB, they changed it, and so you have to sign a contract at least a week out. And so you can't sign up for a show now after that list is out. So I think that is
Nice.
really awesome on their part,
Yeah.
uh, because it takes away just athletes taking advantage of
Kind of like
the
cherry picking.
yes, that's exactly it. So yeah. So anyway, I just thought of that.
Squirrel.
Squirrel. Yeah.
But
The Olympia is coming up. That's pretty cool. Um, so they did that first one like 2 years ago. I believe it was in Romania. And so the other one, this year it's in Japan.
oh, that'd be
And
cool.
yeah, yeah, but you have to be at least 40. So that's one of the for Masters Olympia. So I have an old competing friend that is doing that show. So Nicole. So yeah, it'll be fun to watch her.
Yeah, for sure. It's like not that like I don't know, it's just different levels, but as you get older, like things change and stuff. And it is nice to like compete. I don't want to say like people on like the same level as you because that's not the right wording, but like it's nice like when you're 45 or 50 to not be competing against someone who's like 18.
Right, well, that's what I've told you guys before. So when I was competing, part of why I didn't want to compete in the masters levels, because I looked at that because this was before they had Masters Olympia. And so I kind of looked at it as not necessarily a waste of time, but just like, okay, if I win a Masters show, for example, like that never happened, but like if it would have, then what? And for whatever reason, it was really important to me to have this goal of what's next. And back then, I don't feel like there were a lot of options where they had open and masters, because that would have been a nice, because some masters athletes will do that. They'll compete in both at one
Yeah.
show. So I think it's cool. Like, yeah, what you're saying, having a space for the same age, that advanced age. I mean, not like elderly, but like that greater than 35, because you're right. At that point, many of those athletes have had children. We're dealing with different skin issues, gravity issues, hair issues.
Yeah.
Uh, your body just changes, and you can still be in the best shape of your life. but no amount of surgery or cosmetic procedures are going to make you look on the same level as a 20-year-old. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But a positive part, being older, your muscles are more mature.
You have a lot better density and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So there are definitely perks to, being a masters competitor. But yeah, I love how there's a space now
Hmm.
for for those athletes to also have, you know, um, just an opportunity to compete against other like-bodied individuals.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's nice too because it kind of gives some longevity to the sport and it's not
I love that. Yeah, yeah,
just a young man's game. So it's not, I don't know, especially like just me being older and getting into it as I'm, quote, older. It's just nice. Like it's like a little, makes me feel a little bit more, I'm not even sure if I can find the right word, just like
cool.
better about competing against it just because I know there is a future for like your older athletes. Like it's not,
Right,
if I didn't get into it when I was 20, like I'm screwed, it's
right.
so.
And you know that when you're ready to be done with the open
Hmm.
um, visions, that there, it doesn't mean you have to like hang up your heels.
Yeah.
There's still options
Yes. Yes.
that are just as prestigious, in my opinion. Like, I think, just because you're an older athlete doesn't make the Masters Olympia any less prestigious. Now, someone would probably argue with that, but I look at it as I think that's potentially more prestigious because your body is like working against you,
Yeah.
working against Mother Nature. You have hormones that come into play. Like I said, many of the female athletes have birthed babies at that point.
Hmm.
Um, so to still be able to bring your body not only back to quote baseline, but then above and beyond to advance to Olympia, which is the world's best, not even just like your region or, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you have a lot more just like life, bodybuilding and going through a prep at 40, 50, 60 is not the same as 20. Like it's just
Right.
not. And
Well, and
that's okay, but
yeah, your responsibilities are so different.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
like, yeah. So, yeah, cool thing.
But I was gonna say like kind of bringing it full circle. So we're talking about keeping things youthful and the fountain of youth. It's gonna bring us kind of to today's topic. We're talking about peptides. Finally, at least a nice little like intro into them. Talk about some of like the more popular ones. Kind of what they are, why people are even interested in them, why people are starting them, and some basic like just like what to expect, I guess, if that's the right
Yeah.
phrasing.
Yeah. I mean, peptides are blowing up right now. I think, you're definitely seeing them in like the influencer space.
Yeah.
You see them when people are talking about like even like their pre-workouts or their cosmetics, you see kind of that highlighted label of includes peptides.
Mhm.
And I think well, first of all, I think it's important for people to understand like what is a peptide. And so like the thing that makes peptides cool is that we have peptides. Peptides are a natural part of our body. And so it's not like anabolics or SARMs or some of those other substances that we're injecting or consuming that our body doesn't make. So they're exogenous. Peptides are actually what we already have. And so a peptide, I mean, just to give like basic information, we have amino acids, which are essentially like building blocks, like chains within a protein. And so protein molecules, they're bigger, you have chains of amino acids. And so what peptides are, is they are like a shorter chain of amino acid. And so the unique thing about peptides is that they're like these like little messengers in the body. So what peptides do naturally is they trigger these biologic reactions. And so if you think about it, it's kind of like there are these little keys that are like circulating around that tell our body um, to do certain. Um, oops, are you still there?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Technical bloop.
Yeah, well, I had a phone call and I was like trying to figure out like how to ignore. Um, so anyway, like if you think of peptides as like being these little keys that tell your body to unlock certain functions. So that might be like telling your body to burn extra fat or build muscle or maybe decrease inflammation, produce more collagen, speed up healing, and so on. So, like, our body already has these peptides. It's just now if we inject or consume exogenous peptides, we're just kind of amping up um, that messenger system, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
you're going to see like these peptides. I mean, like we just said, you hear them, influencer talking about it. You're probably seeing them at like those wellness clinics, sports medicine, anti-aging clinics. And really what these people are is they have a goal and, whether that's to maybe increase hormone levels or improve sleep, skin elasticity, gut health. I mean, the list goes on. But what I think is really important, because they are really powerful, it's really important to keep in mind that there's no like one size fits all. And I think that's the part that when I see some of these influencers online, on Instagram, whatever, it's like they're sometimes what I feel like they're giving the message that's false is that if you take this, this will happen for all of you. And that's not the case. And the
Right.
other really important to remember is that these are not FDA regulated. So it's not that they're illegal, but they're not approved by the FDA. And so it becomes more difficult to get a hold of these peptides.
Mhm.
And you have to be really careful because we don't have, it's not that we don't have data. I mean, we have a lot of data on certain peptides. I think of like BP 157, which I'll talk about. We have a lot of data on that, but it takes a really long time for studies to come through to
Mhm.
say like, okay, we finally approve this. And I mean, think of like the female testosterone use for female. I mean, we have so much data on that, but look how long it's taking for the FDA to approve it. And on top of that, it's really expensive.
Right.
Uh, but there are peptides that are um, approved by the FDA. So think of, insulin's a peptide. So insulin, that's unlocking. That's the key that unlocks the glucose to be able to get into the cell for energy. Semaglutide, tirzepatide, those are peptides. Our body naturally has those GLP-1 peptides, and they are approved by the FDA. So not all peptides are not approved, but that's something that people need to remember is that just like many supplements that we take, there's really not this set of regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when peptides, I think the general stance, healing, anti-aging, fat loss. I mean, honestly, like if you think of a health goal, there's probably a peptide that
Yeah.
can do that. So,
Well, and to like, I just wanted to bring up too, like you're kind of talking about like the FDA approved and all that stuff, and I just kind of like that blanket statement reminder, like with anything, and it's kind of like with the storms, like make sure whatever you are getting from is a good quality source, and it's not just I don't know trash substance. You know what I mean? Like because I've had people that have had said, hey, I took something, and I didn't feel anything, or I didn't notice anything results, which, like you said, some stuff doesn't always go the same with everyone, but at the same time, I want to be like, well, I mean, what was the quality of the substance you were taking? And I think sometimes people forget too that the quality and the source matter just as much as far as like what and everything as well.
right, 100%. And, that kind of brings me to, because I imagine the people are going to say, okay, well, how do you find like a reputable provider or, can I just get this online or where can I order these? And I'm not going to give out like any reputable websites because I think it's important for people to do their own research.
Yeah.
But where a lot of these peptides are coming from is through a provider and then going through a compounding pharmacy. So, what compounding pharmacies, what their role is that typically, in order for a medication, so like compounding pharmacies, a lot of times you're going to see those used for like hormone replacement therapy,
Mhm.
dermatology, wound care, vet uses. So like some of those supplements, they'll say like for animal use. I think
Yeah.
you see that on like SARMs.
Yeah,
Uh,
or like research purposes or something like that.
Yeah. So, like the compounding meds, typically they're able to get used in place of the FDA because it's typically thought as, um, since they don't go through the clinical trials, they're being more so used for like certain doses, or maybe because a medication isn't available because of XYZ. There's a lot of kind of ins and outs. So for example, like right now, people, they were able to get semaglutide, tirzepatide. So think of like Ozempic, Mounjaro. They were able to get those pretty easy through compounding pharmacies. Well,
Right.
the original creator of those medications is now having some pushback, and there's some legal issues going on. So now compounding pharmacies are going to even have a harder time getting a hold of those medications. And there, again, there's a lot of ins and outs. So, just if you have a provider in your area that, they advertise for peptides, or you want to do your research online, but you want to look for compounding pharmacies or providers that willingly offer you third party testing results. So, like if you have a compounding pharmacy and they can show you, their testing results, or they can give you proof that their stuff is legit. Very important. And even if you have legit stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same effect. And I think an example of this is, you and I could both go on semaglutide, for example, and you may be on like the lowest dose possible and not feel anything, like no appetite suppression, um, food noise is still there, etc. And I may go on the same dose of semaglutide, and that's just the one I'm using for example, and I'm like nauseous, can't keep anything down.
Yeah.
Out of food makes me nauseous. So it's really a game of trial and error and finding what works best for you, and that's really important to be done under supervision, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
No, I agree. And it's kind of like you were saying, it's just sometimes people want like that quick fix, or the, like you said, they see their latest influencer and they're recommending this company. They're like, "Wow, I want to look like that." So like click, 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 buy, and have no idea as far as, like dosing or anything like that. Like haven't done the research, haven't even don't even know who to talk to, and they just like I like to say, just absolutely raw dog it and then wonder why it didn't go the way they want.
yeah. Well, and I always think the ones that are kind of red flags to me sometimes, and this is so like this kind of brings me like BP 157. That one is very, I think, very familiar to a lot of people that are probably listening to
Yeah.
us. But that one's kind of known as like the body protection peptide. So that one, it does a lot of healing in the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, even like gut lining. So this one, they use a lot for injuries, joint pain, digestive issues. You can do it an injection, or what I was getting at is this one is also used a lot orally because of the gut healing, lining, protection, etc. So,
Okay.
with the exception of BP 157, for the most part, though, I think you have to be aware of oral peptides, or like products that claim to, do all these things but are taken orally. Because as soon as you take something orally, because it has to go through the first pass effect through the liver,
Hmm.
it's really hard to tell how much of the medication is going to be metabolized and not even used for the function it's supposed to serve, which is why
Right.
a lot of peptides are thought to be better used if they're injected, because they're not going through. And then there's less concern about liver damage, etc.
Right.
Um, so, you know, So I guess what I was getting at is what I'm seeing a lot is these people that are like drinking their drinks and they're like, "Oh, I'm drinking my peptides for today." Like we've seen it, and
Yeah.
our listeners, they've seen it. And they claim that they have all of this strength and that because of this pre-workout, they have their peptides. Or it's a picture of them like out in the sun, drinking their peptides, and they're like, I'm getting added vitamin D because I got my peptides. I mean, just really blanket statements that it's kind of annoying, but
Yeah.
uh,
It's a new buzzword.
yes. And like I said, cosmetics, although there is a cosmetic one that maybe some of our listeners have heard of. It's called GHKCU. And this is a copper based peptide, and its big role is like skin rejuvenation, hair growth, tissue repair, collagen, reduce inflammation, wound healing. So, where I'm seeing this is like wellness spas, facial creams, some of those micro needling systems now that are
Yeah.
like, oh, GHKCU, and they can inject it. Now, I will say I have used this one personally, and I made a face cream into it out of the powder. I did see big results in this, but
Really? So like
I,
when you say big results, I guess what would
oh,
be like some like the highlights?
so I feel like the texture of my skin was improved. I feel like kind of that overall glow was better, and
Okay.
not the glow like your face is greasy glow, but kind of just like it looks well hydrated.
Okay.
I felt like my makeup went on better because my skin wasn't as scaly. I felt like it was a little bit smoother, so makeup would
Okay.
go on better. I also felt like I could go longer in between Botox periods. And anybody who gets Botox that is also a hard trainer in the gym, you know what I mean when I say that our Botox doesn't last as long. And some will use Dysport. So this is kind of like a side tangent. Some believe that Dysport, which is like another neurotoxin, but it's thought to be a little bit better for people who work out routinely. It tends to spread out and feather out a little bit better, but it's also thought to um, keep its results for longer than traditional Botox. There's also another Botox family called Daxify. That one's supposed to be the long acting Botox. I have done all three of those. Many athletes that I've talked to swear by Dysport. I know that Dysport tends to last longer, but for me personally, Botox is better choice for me. I tried Daxify. It's supposed to last 6 months. I
Yeah.
feel like it lasted 4. So it still lasted like twice as long as what Botox lasts for me. But anyway, side tangent. I feel like when I use the GHKCU, I could go like 3.5 months between Botox.
Oh, wow,
Um,
okay.
yeah. Um, so I really like it. I've also injected it for wound healing. So I kind of had like this concoction that I did for wound healing. So I'm a big supporter of BPC 157 and the GHKCO. Um, in the body, so we've talked about semaglutide, tirzepatide. I think everybody knows, for the most part, like what those peptides are. I mean, don't you think? I mean, are there
Yeah,
questions?
I would say especially like the BP 157, that's the one like I've seen the most as far as like a lot of like the influencer stuff. I've seen that a lot. But I think in my space, I follow a lot of like your quote normal sport
Right.
athletes. And so I think that's why I see that more in my feed and like my space and stuff as far as like you said, because just the general like injury prevention, healing, all of that stuff. So yeah, I would say that's probably the most popular one I see. I've never heard of that other one.
The
For
GH.
like the skin and all that stuff. I had not heard of that one.
And I think that one's going to be more up and coming.
Okay.
Uh, Another one that often is paired with BPC 157 um, is TB 500. And
Yeah,
so
I've
that
heard
one,
that one.
that's thymosin beta 4. And so they call it, you're going to hear it as TB 500, but that one's also good for tissue regeneration, reduces inflammation. But like I said, that one's a lot of times paired with BP 157, and it has kind of like a synergistic form or synergistic effect. And what that means, I think most people know what that means, but synergistic effect is like when one medication's effect by itself is actually greater when it's combined with another substance. And so like together they're better type of
Yeah.
effect. So that one is often paired, especially for like faster injury recovery or like with intense training, so that you can get better results from recovery. So then in return, then you can build muscle faster and all the things.
Another popular one too, and you might get this one too. I was talking with a friend the other day too, and they were talking about MK, and I can't remember the numbers. Is MK something?
Um, did you say MK?
Yeah, like Mary Kate.
Oh, I was like, kind of like cut out, and I was like, what? Uh, so that one is a bodybuilding one.
Okay.
M677, I think it is. Um, oh gosh,
That's gonna be
I
more like your like muscle
born.
building type.
Yeah, so that's more of like a growth hormone. Um,
Okay.
and that it has to do with the growth hormone, and it stimulates like a growth hormone. But actually, with that one, also can be kind of like partnered with or very next relative to is IGF-1 LR. I don't know if you've heard that one.
I have not.
So that is also like a growth factor. It's a precursor to HGH, human growth hormone. And
Okay.
so that one's going to be big for like your muscle growth, cell repair, recovery. Um, it's thought to be more potent than like your genuine like growth hormone. Um, and so, but this one is, it's going to, I mean, your general population is likely not using this one. And same with like your MK. I'm pretty sure it's like 677, but that one, that's also kind of on the same, the IGF-1. They're kind of working on that same peptide chain, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, with the MK677 is that it is working, it mimics ghrelin. So, ghrelin, for those of us who don't know, I don't remember if it's an actual hormone or just a signal, but ghrelin is what tells your body to be hungry. Just like leptin is what tells your body to be satisfied. So sometimes when somebody is in like a really extreme dieting phase or cut phase, though they are hormones, those hormones get disrupted. So like think of when you've been in like a really, really diet phase, you're like hungry all the time,
You have no
right?
full signal. Yeah.
Right, right. So not only are you hungry all the time, but then you never have that satiety of being full. That is leptin. So leptin is saying like, hey, I'm satisfied. I don't need any more food. Ghrelin is what's saying you're hungry. So we know that in order to build muscle, you also have to be able to feel your body. So what the MK is also helping to do is it's stimulating that hunger, the ghrelin, so that you can actually want to fuel your body with more food.
And that,
However,
oh, go ahead.
I've never used it. I don't think I would like that because I don't think I want to. I mean, unless I had a really hard time getting in my macronutrients and protein, etc. I
Yeah.
don't think I want something that makes me hungry.
Well, especially, I mean, especially for, like your category, if you're talking about bodybuilding terms, I mean, as far as like bikini, not that you guys don't eat a lot, in a growth phase and stuff, but it's like you're not trying to get, these big old freaking mass monsters who are trying to shovel down 5, 6,000 calories.
Right. Well, and the
Um,
other thing, we have to be careful. We don't want all the additional body fat that could come with the added calories.
yeah.
So, I mean, even like your smaller divisions like bikini, if those girls don't have muscle to begin with, they have to grow muscle just like any other division.
Hmm.
But they also don't necessarily need to put on the amount to where they need to be putting all the added body fat on either.
Yeah, and I will say when I was talking to my friend the other day, that was something that they mentioned was that they were just literally hungry all the time. They're like I literally I can't stop eating. And they eat clean, it's not like they're just shoving down like pizzas and chips and stuff like that because they were joking like people have no idea how hard it is to eat that much like clean
Yeah,
food combined with now that peptide adding into that hunger, creating more of those signals. They're like literally like I'm eating food and thinking about what I'm going to eat
no,
next.
yeah, it become really stressful.
Yeah.
Like when people have, um, I mean, really, it can become a form of orthorexia, which just is a dysfunctional relationship with food. So whether it's anorexia to where you're restrictive or it's bulimia, which I think we all know what that is, that binge and purge, but
Mhm.
anorexia can also be where you have such an extreme obsession with when you're eating, what you're eating,
Yeah.
um, timing. And there was a podcaster that I listened to. Actually, I think it was one of the Mind Pump guys. Yeah, Justin, or it doesn't matter which one. One of the Mind Pump guys, I remember them talking about when they were trying to put on muscle and it was really difficult for them. And one of them said that they even had a timer that they would set like in the middle of the night to get up and get like an added meal because they physically could not fit in another meal throughout the day. But
Yeah.
of course, then
To
it's
that
like,
point, I'm like, you're interrupting your sleep, which that's
yeah,
like your main like muscle building, fat loss, overall wellness
right,
factors. Like it's like
yeah,
you're
that's
almost just spinning your wheels at that point. Like let that meal go and have the sleep and the rest.
and that's exactly what they were saying is that if they knew now what they knew back then, they would know like, okay, you're better off just maybe tacking on a little bit to every meal
Yeah.
and really sure you're getting a good night's sleep because now, yeah, you're spinning your wheels. Now you have inflammation, you have disrupted sleep. Um, yeah, and there's data to show too that in to everybody it's kind of a preference, but they it's typically thought that it can be disruptive to your sleep if you go to bed with a really full belly.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's this like magic number of don't eat after certain time or do you remember that rule? I remember it being a rule. Like if you ate after 6 p.m. or after 7 p.m., everything after that point would get turned to body fat. And I
Yeah.
remember like legit
Yeah.
believing that. And that's like not the case. Um,
I'm sitting here like I work at night shift. I'm like, that's my lunch.
right, right.
I
And
have four more meals.
I mean, I think meal timing is important. Let's say you only have so many carbs per day, especially into a prep for show. I think it's important then to really make sure those carbs are utilized around your training.
Right.
Uh, but besides that, I think people get a little bit too weird about their meal timing um, and that can cause more stress, which can lead to spiked cortisol and
Yeah.
kind of diminished returns at that point. So
Yeah. I've noticed so like with since we're just real quick on like the topic of like meal timing and stuff, what I've noticed so like when I'm in a prep, towards the end, especially when I'm like my hunger level is really, really high and I'm not getting like, quote a lot or I really haven't like full satisfied. I would try and time it so my last meal was as close to kind of bedtime as I could get. Because as you said, going to bed with a full stomach can disrupt your sleep. But I noticed for me personally too, anyway, going to sleep where like I was like painfully hungry also disrupted my sleep. So if I could find where I could time that last meal to where I at least had some food in my stomach when I went to sleep, then I wasn't waking up as much with like, those hunger pains and stuff. But then on the flip side, now that I'm in a bulk, I try not to have my last meal really close to bedtime. Cause like you said, then I'm just kind of laying in bed. Like I have just like that just kind of blah feeling. And then I also notice the next morning, like I feel like my body didn't digest the food as well because it just like ate and then laid down and
yeah,
did nothing. Um,
yeah.
so I
Well,
like to have like some kind of like movement after I have a meal, whether that's like a walk or, I'm doing some chores around the house or just something to where I'm having some nice movements before, I lay down for bed or whatever, I've noticed that's helped my digestion and then not just having that like blah, super full feelings, especially right now when I'm in a pretty heavy surplus.
No, that's a great point, because I also remember the hunger pains at night, and that would keep you up, and you almost like start obsessing over food at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but I think like generally it's thought that, if you can go to bed with relatively empty stomach, then your body can be more efficient at getting your body into a deep sleep. And
Mhm.
it's not trying to first focus on digestion and then go into a deep sleep. So even though like psychologically we might feel better with, food in our stomachs, that physiologically it's probably better if you can minimize, an excess.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of interesting, with the ghrelin. So that MK peptide, kind of like I said, kind of in that same family as IGF-1, LR3. And it's a lot of letters and numbers that people are probably going to find out. But it's
Yeah.
kind of like trade names of medications versus generic, but
We got
um,
to go too. I mean, kind of it's very similar to like the SARMs, there's not that they're, I don't know, like these super bad chemicals or whatever, but in the same space, like they are, quote, research chemicals or whatever you want to call them. And so like that's where you're seeing those names and it's not, your classic whatever medication name. I don't want to say because I don't want to get sued, but
yeah, right, right.
but that's just where you're having like a lot of like the letters, or people short them down. You're like we've said like just BP or MK or stuff like that. Because
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes the letters get to be kind of a mouthful, or it's like I can't remember. I got two brain cells, so
Yeah. Well, there's a SARM, ostarine, that, if memory serves me right, its letters are MK something, something, something. And
okay.
so it get confusing where it's like, okay, you have your SARMs, which again, SARMs are, they're not anabolic steroids, but they're selective androgen receptive modulators.
Yeah,
So it's kind of like they're the precursors to what anabolic steroids would do, but they're not quite considered anabolics.
yeah,
Um, and those are illegal for the most part. And usually, there's on the bottle or however, it'll say like tested on animals, and
yeah.
that's just the
They're
for,
way more gray area.
yes, yeah, for sure. Um, Another popular one that I think people are probably a little familiar with is CJC. That also has numbers behind it, 1295, and it's often paired with ipamorelin. Um, and that, again, those are stacked for kind of that synergistic effect. That's also going to be, helps to promote that growth hormone release, which growth hormone in our body, which lifting weights also promotes growth hormone. So that's why you hear it called the fountain of youth. But growth hormone, I mean, its overall role is fat loss, muscle growth, better sleep, faster recovery, the list goes on.
Yeah,
So it can have these natural releases of what we already have in our body. So that's what the CJC ipamorelin is. And you also will hear of tesamorelin. It's in that same family as ipamorelin. So very close cousins. Um, One that I want to touch on, because I think it's going to be big in the bodybuilder space specifically, especially now that we're seeing some pushback with the semaglutide and tirzepatide, especially in compounding pharmacies,
mm,
is a new one. I mean, it's been around for a bit. I remember hearing about it, um, the last fall, maybe. I'm trying to recall like when I first heard of it.
okay,
But it's called retatrutide. And so the cool thing about this one is it has three components to it. So your semaglutide and tirzepatide, they're kind of thought as to have just like this two component with the GLP-1, between like insulin sensitivity and the GLP part of that decreased gastric emptying, so kind of two part. But this retatrutide, it's going to have three parts. And so one of them is still going to be similar to your semaglutide, tirzepatide. I'm just going to say GLPs, okay? Just because it's awful. The first part, it's going to be very similar to those in the fact that it still has that delayed gastric emptying. So you're going to be satisfied longer. Um, and it's still going to have that enhanced insulin secretion. But it's also going to have a role in fat metabolism. And the third component, which is kind of, the third special one, is it's going to help with energy expenditure. So if we use more energy, we need more, we're going to end up using more fat. So, if that makes sense. So that one, mark my words, I think that one's going to be big, especially in bodybuilding.
Yeah, we're kind of hitting all three boxes with it rather than having to, you know,
Right.
mix and match.
And you'll hear it probably recalled as Retta. So if someone's, kind of like some of the other nicknames that we've given other
Mhm.
supplements, yeah, this one you're going to hear probably referred to as Retta. Um, but two others I think are just really interesting, like totally just for funsies here. Um, so you can also use peptides for sexual dysfunction, or not even necessarily like a dysfunction, but sexual enhancement, we'll say.
Really?
Uh, so one popular one is called PT 141, and it's got like bremelanotide, probably like murdering the, but PT 41, that's what you're going to hear it referred to as. And this one, like, it's not just on the sex hormones, but this one works on the brain. Because remember, like what we've talked about with testosterone, is your sexual libido or your sexual desire. That is also, your brain plays a big role in that.
Yeah,
So
it's a mood, and where do moods
the
come from? Your brain. So,
your brain, yeah. So praise Kelly Casperson for all of her and she's a great one. Like for those of you who are listening to us, if you don't know who Kelly Casperson is, she is a renowned urologist, but she has really been a huge advocate for not only women's hormones, but testosterone. And just, I feel like overall, she's just a really cool human. And she
when
really like advocates for well-being.
yeah, and she breaks things down in a very like simple, easy to understand, digestible content. Like you can tell she's very, very educated and she's very knowledgeable about what she's talking about, but the way that she's able to deliver it, it makes it very, very easy for people of all different levels to like engage and understand and really grasp what she's saying.
100%. And she's funny. But what I like about her too is you can tell she's being authentic. Sometimes what I've found with some of those other hormone providers, because I love listening to that stuff. And sometimes the information is really good in their podcast, but it's almost like they're trying too hard to be funny or to
Yeah.
be relevant, or and you'll see that in some of their reels too, where it's
Yeah.
like they come across as like, okay, now they're just annoying. I don't find that with Kelly. It's like
No.
she's like the whole package, and she is really on the front line too of like going to the FDA. Like there was just she was just gave this speech panel at one of the FDA conventions, I think yesterday, or at least that's when I was seeing the information, really trying to get a female approved testosterone
Yeah.
um, on the market. So that's awesome. But so this PT 141, it's not just working on the sexual hormones, but it's really working on the brain. So it can boost libido in men and women. So both men and women can use it. It can also be used, like we said, for libido, low sex drive, but it can also be used for erectile dysfunction. So, and that's something that we've brought up kind of periodically through our podcast too. Sexual dysfunction, it's a real thing. And so if that's like something that you're dealing with, whether it's like you or your partner, like get it addressed, talk to someone, because man, it doesn't have to be this stigma topic. And you and your partner really want to be on the same page. So that's a cool one. Side effects of that one, I haven't experienced, but it's kind of like a known side effect is nausea. So
Oh,
a couple of things around that. Suggestions have been, try to take it. First of all, like if you're going to take it, it's not really clear like how long it takes to work. Like there's some data saying, it's an hour. There's other data saying that it's a couple hours. So I think a downfall with this P141, um, at least with like Viagra, Cialis, some of those, like it's pretty easy to pop a pill if you feel like, there's going to be some action going on in the next hour or so.
Yeah.
Uh, but the PT141, because of the exact like time to start working, it's going to take some trial and error. And if you're also nauseous, you're also probably not going to be in the mood
Right.
to
Right.
do that. So I think you just have to play around with it a little bit. Um, and then the last kind of cool one that I want to touch on, because I think if this one works well, it's going to be another huge bodybuilder one. But it's called melanotan. And so you can about imagine what that one's going to do. So it, um, it stimulates melanin production. So melanin is needed for tan. So um, this one, there's melatonin 1 and 2, and we don't have to get into like each one, but number 2 is a little bit stronger than number 1. It lasts a little bit longer, doesn't take as long to work. Some questions I have around this are like, if it stimulates melanin, is a person going to be more at risk for skin cancer? Like, I guess that would
Yeah.
be some of my questions around this one. And, there was also some reports of like some uneven like skin tones or increased freckles and
That's what
moles.
I was thinking too, is it would more like your, I don't know, blemishes is the right word, but yeah, kind of like that uneven like
Blotch.
skin tone or patches and yeah.
Yeah. But if this one like gets researched more and shows like, wow, this stuff really works, I could see it really blowing up for, people who like to be in the tanning bed but don't want the side effects associated with that. And they like
Yeah.
to have, so think of your people on year round, they're like using the self tan. Like this could get rid of so many of those inconveniences with tanning yourself. But I
Yeah.
could it being huge for the bodybuilder space for competing, that if you want to use this first to have a good base, and then maybe you wouldn't need as much of your self tanner. But obviously that's going to take a lot of trial and error, because what if the tanner doesn't go on the same?
Right. Yeah, like you don't,
The
that's
same.
so yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. Fun fact though about this melanotan, again, guess what the most reported side effect is with it? I don't think you'll guess.
Um yeah, I was just gonna say like this the discolor like skin patches or something, but
Okay, so the second thing that melanotan is used for is again decreased libido and ED. So
which is kind of
most
wild.
right. So most reported side effects so far in data was um, spontaneous erections. So not even like erections necessarily like when you want them, but
I
spontaneous,
just want to be tan. I don't want boners.
right? But also erections that could last like 40 minutes to an hour. So I mean, at
Oh,
least it's not the 4 hours to where you need to go to the emergency room. Uh, but yeah, so obviously like for us that wouldn't be an issue. um if you have spontaneous arousal, that's not always a bad thing. It could be a bad thing, but so melanotan was also being kind of used, yeah, for the libido, similar to the PT141. I know one person who has used melanotan. He reports that it worked. He appeared that it worked. In fact, I asked him, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, is that all from? He's like, no, I have also been outside, with the kids. This guy is a
yeah.
bodybuilder. Um, but he's super dark. But he said that it definitely made him tan easier outside, and that he
Okay.
was already developing a tan prior. Now, regarding the sexual side effects, A, I did not ask. B, he did not disclose. So I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Uh, maybe if he listens to this, maybe he'll send in the podcast a message saying like, yep or nope, or uh,
Can confirm.
yeah. So I thought that was interesting. But I
Huh.
mean, with all of these, it just goes to show like, you know, again, we have peptides in our body naturally. They're already doing these functions. We're just looking to enhance or speed up what our body's already doing. But it doesn't mean that they're completely risk-free. And that's why there's just kind of this gray zone of they're not FDA approved, but we do have a lot of data on some of them, not all of them. And so I think if you choose to want to utilize these, you've got to do your own research and just make sure it's the right decision for you. And then
Right.
also sure that or just be realistic about what results you could or may not get.
Right. Yeah. And like we said too, like making sure you have a good quality source. Also stand by. You guys are gonna hear a little bit of Bluey in the background while I retrieve my dog from my living room.
Uh,
Stand by.
but like what we're finding with the GLPs and even insulin, I think insulin is a great example. What insulin dose works for one person might not be the perfect insulin dose for someone else because there's other things to take in consideration, such as, how much are you training or exercising? What's your diet like? What's your sleep like? What is your genetic background? Uh,
Right.
and what other supplements, medications, what other things are you doing? So just like we would never expect to give everybody a one size fits all insulin dose, I really think that we need to keep that in mind with these peptides and even GLPs. Sometimes I get a little cringy because I feel like all these people are starting at the same dose and then they increase at the same time. And it's like we don't have to dose all the same. So find yourself a provider too that recognizes that and can really help you coach, not so much depending on numbers or because a week's been passed, but really like because of how are you feeling as an individual.
Yeah. And like we constantly preach to, and you kind of did a little bit, that those outside lifestyle factors too make such a big difference. If you're taking um XYZ, peptide for fat loss or muscle building or whatever the case may be, if you're not also making lifestyle considerations and changes, like you said, you're not gonna have the same success. Like you're not gonna have the same results as someone who is taking all those all of those extra steps and doing all of that extra, work and foundation building behind it. Like it's not, again, like we said before, it's not going to be a magic pill is going to fix everything. It's going to be your cherry on top that's going to help boost and improve everything you're already doing. And like you said with the other stuff, like so many people forget that and then get upset when they're taking these, substances or peptides or whatever it may be, and they're not having those results. And it's like, okay, well, how's your sleep? How's your stress? How's your water? How's your diet? Are you going to the gym? Are you being intentional in the gym? Like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, no, I'm not doing any of that. I just have to take this pill. And it's like, that's not how that works. Like,
Well, right. And we really found that out when we had our Ozempic discussion of, these can be really great tools, but if you're not utilizing them appropriately and doing all the other work,
yes.
um, first of all, you're not doing your body any service. And second of all, these peptides in like, for the most part, they're expensive.
Yeah.
And so, why spend the money on something that you believe is going to be a quick fix that really isn't going to do much for you? But if you do everything else, it can really be that little bit of percentage that kind of puts you over the top. And so, I think we discuss bodybuilders a lot in the competing because that's what we know too. Um, but like a competitor, they are already checking all the boxes. So maybe a peptide is something that gives them that little bit percent difference in
Hmm.
comparison to XYZ. But for the general population, these are not going to be just magic potions. So I think of someone, let's say you're recovering from an injury and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to take BP 157 and TB 500 and I'm going to stack that and I'm going to like heal so fast. Well, another huge component of healing is protein. So, if you're not getting your protein and you're not adequately hydrated and you're not getting enough rest for your body to recover and rejuvenate,
Hmm.
now your body is chronically stressed. And on top of it, it's stress from a wound. guarantee your expensive concoction
Mhm.
um, is not going to do you much justice. But if you do everything else, you might really find that, okay, you recovered quicker, or you had less scarring from maybe a wound.
Yeah,
You know, right now, those studies are hard to confirm because it's hard to know, like, well, how would you have healed otherwise without it? You
right.
don't know that until, so that's why a lot of these studies are anecdotal. Um, but they are, they're doing more like controlled studies and getting more data. But that's what I was saying is that's why, even though on the surface many of these peptides seem relatively safe, it's going to take a long time for us to gather the data, um, and then to really be able to with confidence say that these are like good to
Yeah.
go. Not to mention, there's always politics and big pharma that plays a part, and
Mhm.
you don't have to get that, but money is always a role too. And so sometimes big pharma doesn't want other alternative selections to play, because then that causes what is FDA approved right now, those medications won't be sold as much, or just there's so much more to it. We don't have to get into it, but
Yeah.
uh, it's just a lot. I think it's going to be a lot before these peptides, some of them become approved. It took a while for the GLPs to get out there, and not all GLPs are approved,
Yeah.
or they're not necessarily approved for fat loss. They're approved for type 2 diabetes. Um,
With the side effect of.
right, with the secondary use. I think Wegovy, that's one of them that is actually FDA approved for obesity. But yeah, interesting. But yeah, proceed with caution, I think, needs to be kind
Yeah.
of the, and don't believe everything you see by your influencer. And just because you drink something that, because it's not FDA approved, you can also see all these random claims, and they
Yeah.
can't, I don't want to say they can't get sued for it, but because the claims aren't regulated by the FDA, they can say whatever they want. So they can say, like, oh, my fancy drink with my peptides causes my hair to grow. And I grew all this muscle and I feel so strong and my energy, all these things. They can make these claims
Yeah.
without being reprimanded. So,
Yeah. Or like there's no, there's not the same amount like of accountability behind it,
right.
especially when you're seeing the people that are like sponsored by these companies. That's always
Yeah.
kind of like a big, I don't want to say like flag because um I preach a lot of the companies that I use and stuff. And I'll, do like the affiliate code for the companies I use. But a lot of the time it is because it is a genuine like product that I do use personally. I do stand behind. But a lot of these big influencers, like it's all just about the paycheck and what they can get. So just like you were saying, just be aware of your source and your quality. And even better yet, if you can go to a clinic or a doctor or a physician, as always, that's going to be just the better route.
Well, and I think too, you also need to recognize that if you go to like your primary provider, chances are he or she may not know anything about what you're talking about. And if you do bring up a peptide, they might be like, oh, no, don't use that. It's bad. And not because they're wrong, but because they're uneducated about it.
Right.
So, peptides, it kind of is in that, um, not obviously not the same category as hormones, but it's kind of in that same kind of functional health pathway where we have traditional Western medicine that they're taught, very like algorithm, like
Mhm.
you do this and then you do this, and there's not a lot of gray zone. I mean, there is, but it's more black and white, where you have your functional medicine pathway that involves hormones and peptides. And what's different is, like, we don't have these like magic tests or labs or imaging that we can diagnose a lot of these things. A lot of it is just what the patient says, which is very subjective. And so subjective information versus objective or measurable data is really what separates these two divisions of medicine, or the
Yeah.
practice. So,
Yeah, and
but that,
well, kind of like when we were talking about like, the hormone stuff, it's very hard to quantitatively do quality of life, you know, signs, symptoms, results, because like I said, like you can't you can't put that on a scale because it's a quality. Like it's not a number. It's not something you can, track and stuff. And it's very, like you said, very subjected to each person, and it's very personal to that person. It's not a one size fits all type of thing. So
Yeah, definitely. But no, I think this is a good, kind of baseline for people.
mhm.
Uh, and if people have more questions or they have specific, um, questions about certain ones, definitely reach out. Like I am not, um, can't think of the word, expert. I'm like, I'm not by no means, but I'm very interested in this stuff. And
Yeah,
I had just gone to the World Peptide Conference.
yeah.
We went to that, gosh, not long ago.
Just really within the last month or
Yeah,
so.
yeah, it was about a month ago.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed that. And but one of the same messages kept coming up, and it wasn't go on peptides. The main message was we've got to better care of ourselves. We've got to lift weights and we got to eat our protein. And a big problem with society is that we're under muscled. So that was, I mean, even though the conference was on peptides and different peptides and how they can be beneficial, and there was great speakers, and you're surrounded by all these like-minded providers, nurses, functional health people in that space, and personal trainers. I mean, that was the main message, that we can use peptides as tools, but it really comes down to the foundation, and our
Yeah.
foundation is our muscle.
Yeah. Which
So,
I feel like too, I mean, that's kind of like the general, we're gonna start sounding like broken records on a lot of our pods and stuff, but it's like, like again, like if you don't have the foundation and you don't have the bricks, anything that you try and build, like it's just not going to. Like if you're not checking off the main bare minimum boxes, you can take all of the magic pills, all the magic serums, all that stuff, and it's not going to work the way that you want it to, the way you expect it to, and you're just going to continue to spin your wheels. And if anything, put yourself in an even worse situation than you were before,
yeah,
like you said, especially with some of the stuff like working out and stuff like that, like it can increase, the stress, good stress, but it's still stress to your body. And if you're not taking the time to properly recover and sleep and hydrate and put fuel, which is food, quality fuel into your body, like your machine, no matter how hard you work it, it's going to start to break down. It's just like a car. If you don't maintain it, you don't change the oil, you don't put gas in it, like doesn't matter if you have a Ferrari or a 90s Honda Civic, like it's not gonna move, So
yeah, interesting. And um, yeah, so I think that's all I got. But
yeah, like you said, it's kind of a nice little intro into some like the main more popular peptides. Obviously like they're a lot more popular right now. They're becoming more known. They're the newest buzzword, that everyone's throwing around and stuff, but they've been around for a while. Like you said, there's something that's already in our body. They're just those extra keys now that kind of cherry on top to help what your body's trying to do.
yeah, and I think just kind of finish out like one red flag. If it sounds too good to be true, proceed with caution. Like if it's like making all of these promises, and it claims just like any other supplement, like fat loss drug, or, there's probably a caveat to that.
Mhm.
So, just keep in mind that there could be, there is anyway, a whole nother tangent. There was another peptide that was interesting, but um, just I guess keep in mind too, there could be side effects,
Mhm.
and sometimes our body puts a break to things, or puts a halt on certain things in the body, because your body's always trying to keep itself safe. And so if it's halting something, let's say you've been sick and so it's halting further muscle building, it's
Mhm.
because it's trying to keep your body, from getting further sick, but it's also trying to heal your body. So if you try to push through that, you can cause more good, or excuse me, you can cause more harm than good.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so I think that's something also to keep in mind with these. It's just really great area. So I think we just need to tread lightly.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like I said, as we get going, I'm sure they'll come up more often in top
Oh,
in conversations, and we'll definitely hit some more. And if you guys have specific questions on specific ones or compounds or stuff like that, or you're like, hey, like I heard this, or I know so and so is doing this, like, obviously we're not, well, I mean, you're more of a medical professional than I am, but we're not your primary doctor. So
but yeah, we're not your doctor, so
yeah,
we're not.
so we can kind of give our best opinion and thoughts on it, but like I said, end of the day, you need to go seek your own,
Yeah,
for you personally, like I said, because we don't know you personally, but if you do have questions, shoot them over. We'll try and answer them, or at least send you in a direction, maybe that someone has a few more letters behind their name that
yeah,
can
yep,
maybe do a little bit more. But yeah, like you said, I think this was a um, good first one that really kind of dived into some of those peptides and um,
yeah.
go from there.
Awesome. Well, and by the time you're listening to this, that means that this whole idea of the Zoom will have been successful. And if that's the case, I think that then that will really help minimize some of our issues with schedule conflicts.
Yes,
So,
especially during the summer.
yes, during the summer for sure. So, and yeah. So, anyway,
Yeah,
well,
go on with our days. Gonna
go
go
on.
wrangle my tiny humans, and I think you're gonna go do some stuff with your bigger
Yeah, we
humans.
are moving my oldest out of her apartment because she has a house and that she's currently renovating. So that is a lot of work that I'm not knowledgeable in. But I tell her, I'm like, I can help in other ways. Like, I can clean like no one's business. So I can, yeah. And then picking up my youngest then from, she was at FCA camp, which is future Christian athletes or fellow Christian athletes, I believe. And then we get to leave on Sunday because she qualified for the USA TF Junior Olympics
Which is like a huge deal. Jesus.
for her hammer throw. Which fun fact, like she had only thrown a hammer, the hammer, which is like a swinging shot put. For those who don't know, I had never even seen it thrown before. Yeah, she like threw it a couple times because it's not legal in Iowa for safety reasons. So, but they still incorporate it into these big national events because there are states that do still have it as a high school sport. So,
Yeah.
same with the javelin. Like that was cool to watch at regionals.
Yeah.
But I could see how that would be also unsafe. It reminds me of like in the old, in the war when
Sparta.
like, yeah, on their horses, like spearing people. Um, yeah, and the height, not the high jump, where you fling yourself over the bar.
Oh,
The
is this
vault,
pole jumping?
pole vault,
Pole
pole vault.
vault. There you go.
I
Yeah.
think so. That is also not legal in every state for obvious. Which do you remember? Okay, this is the last thing, and then we can close it out. Do you remember? So I thought of this way inappropriate, but during the Olympics, did you see that video go through on TikTok? It was like this, I believe he was from Sweden, and he did the pole vault, and he was going to advance on to finals, if memory serves me right on the story. But some certain male parts got hung up on the bar. And so let's just say that he didn't advance on to the Olympics, like in the Olympics, but
Hmm.
it advanced on to other money making business opportunities. So if you are interested in that story, I'll let our listeners go look that up, and you'll probably see the visual for it also. And you will know that why he has other opportunities now. So it cost him the Olympics, but he's got other things going for him now. So
He is living life now.
loving life. Okay, so with that, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see ya.
Yes, awesome. Okay, bye.
Bye.